Are you wanting to create a highly prosperous photography business doing what you love? Or maybe you have a great business already and want to up your game? Then you're in the right place. Master craftsman photographer Lucy Dumas and her guests are here to support you on your journey. Now here's your hostess and tour guide, Lucy.
Design is the silent ambassador of your brand. I want to welcome you to The Profitable Photographer and hope you've been tuning in. If you are discovering this for the first time, there's 230 other episodes. They're on YouTube's, they're on all the podcast places. And if you want to know more about me and my coaching, it's at lucydumascoaching.com and Lucy with an I, although hot tip, I also own Lucy with a Y. And I had just my own website is Lucy Dumas, and it was a decade before I realized I should have both spellings. So if you had weird spellings, just a little tip. Somebody out there needed to hear this today. Anywho, I'm excited about another opportunity to talk to the amazing Pretty in Pink, Tanya Goodall Smith. Before Barbie, she knew the power of pink, hot pink and black. And if you look her up, you'll know that she uses it well and that it's a part of her branding, which is our topic today. So let me tell you about this amazing humanoid. Wait, actual human. So she had a 15-year corporate design career and left it to, okay, I'm going to start this over. She left her 15-year corporate design career when she recognized that there was a lack of high-quality branding options for people like us. So she founded her WorkStory Creative, which is her company, to fill the gap and help us build authority, raise our perceived value, and attract high-end clients through authentic and beautiful brand storytelling. And she helps coaches, consultants, photographers, and other service-based businesses go from struggling to six figures and beyond, with a brand that looks like $1 million, but doesn't cost that. So welcome, Tanya. I'm so glad to have you on the show again. It's been several years. So
yeah, I'm excited. I really love chatting with you. So
yeah. I was wanting to revisit some people who I really enjoyed and who have had a lot of listeners, and it's been fun to make friends with Tanya on Facebook and such. And it was like, oh, let's have some more quality time. Okay, so branding. I would like a definition.
Okay. Well, branding.
So let me start with, I think you're not going to tell me that it's your logo.
Right. Yeah.
So what is it actually?
I think it was Steve Jobs that said, that's one of the, or maybe some other founder of Amazon. I can't remember his name. Jeff Bezos. I think it was him. He said, your brand is what people are saying about you when you're not in the room. So it's your reputation, right? It's what people think of when they think of you or see your logo, right? Like the logo is a piece of it, but some brands don't even have a logo, right? A lot of personal brands just have a photo. It's their face. It's them. So it's a lot more than a logo. And I like to think of it as a person. Like if your brand was a person, they would have a way of dressing and a way of speaking, and they would live in a certain house and have certain friends. So I like to think of a brand as a living, breathing thing. If that helps you kind of envision what a brand is.
It does somewhat. So it has me thinking like my gardener who doesn't have a website, doesn't have a logo, doesn't advertise, has been a mow and blow guy for I think I've had him for 20 years. So he has a brand in my brain. Like the truck he shows up with, the equipment he uses, the fact that he doesn't trim or plant or fertilize. So how do we go from, like, let's say he was okay, I want more business, or I want to expand and have other people working under my company, and he's putting all of that together. So what's the path to take what we already are and put our best selves forward? I'm using a lot of words right now, but anyway.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. So
Share the journey, because
yeah. So
yes, we're walking around being our brand, but then what?
Yeah, this is the perfect example. So lawn guy, he's got clients, he's been in business a long time, he's probably getting his business from referrals, which is awesome, right? Like that's the best place to start as a service business. But yeah, if he wants to expand, hire people, maybe become a franchise or something, it would be great for him to have a website and for it to look professional, like a real business. So when someone comes to me for branding, we do what I call a brand storm. And
I like that.
Yeah, it's really fun. So it's an interview, usually on Zoom, or, if you're local, we meet in person, and it takes about 2 hours, and I have all these questions where we get everything out about, where you've been, who you are, who your client is, how much do you charge, what pain point are you solving? And yeah, just everything about your brand. It's a strategy session, and I want to learn as much as I can about you. And also a lot of these questions are designed to make you think about things you maybe never thought of before, to help you really clarify what your brand should be, or, what it already is, and directions we might want to take it. So, and then I put all that together in like a brief that summarizes all of the things, gives you keywords and a write-up about who your brand or who your audience is, and all about you, and my recommendations for moving forward. Sometimes like a website sitemap, sometimes marketing suggestions. It just depends on the person, but we start with a strategy. That's my point, I guess. We're not just being like, hey, I need a logo for my truck.
Right.
So,
what I'm hearing is that you take people kind of on a journey of discovery, and that often they will discover things they didn't know. Example, many years ago, there was a woman that did a talk at an imaging expo on branding, and it blew my mind. And actually, I love the whole deal. And she offered half-hour sessions and during the conference. And
cool.
I what happened was, after sharing with her, she totally, in a nutshell, she didn't tell me, colors and copy and things like that, but she said something that I say to my clients all the time, and I always hear them go, oh, is I'm like every kid's Aunt Lucy. I'm a children's portrait specialist. And especially if somebody said, oh, your business is out of your home and not a studio, then I would say, yeah, it's great, because kids feel like they're coming over to Aunt Lucy's house and not some doctor's office. So I was speaking my brand without knowing it. And then she talked about how my things should have like a tactile, handmade, have refined colors, but soft colors. And, she got me started on it. Now, I didn't have the $20 zillion back then, because this was a big company, to hire her to put it together. But it was surprising how, what you just said, I already was communicating my brand without knowing it specifically.
Yeah, but having that defined for you can help you make better decisions. Like you said, right? What should you choose as patterns or textures in, your albums or your colors or whatever? If you keep in mind, I'm Aunt Lucy, like that's going to help you choose, right? You're probably not going to pick hot pink for your brand, because unless Aunt Lucy is, super spunky and whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
What she said was, you're not like Aunt Lucy, the dusty cat lady,
right.
but you're like Auntie Mame, where, you love kids and you're going to get the best out of them, and you're encouraging people and challenging, and
Yeah.
and so hot pink could have worked,
Yeah, it could have. It
but
totally could have. But
and I do have
but
some
not a
Barbie
soft
hot
color.
pink clothes too. I look good in those.
Pink looks really, I think hot pink looks good on pretty much everyone. But anyway, maybe. So anyway, then we take that strategy, and that is going to inform every decision moving forward. So we are going to base any visuals on that definition of who your target audience is. I like to think of, what is going to attract your audience, even more so than like, who are you? Because I mean, oftentimes our client is like us, but sometimes they're not, right? Like maybe Yard Guy works with multimillionaires and their giant lawns, but he lives, in a cabin in the woods because that's what he likes, so you want to,
he's kind of like that. Yeah.
yeah, you want to communicate to the audience that you want, not necessarily yourself. So I've had some clients oftentimes where they'll be like, oh, my favorite color is red or whatever, and but red is not going to be a good color for your audience, and so channeling them kind of in that direction to like, let's keep on track, let's remember, who your audience is and what you're trying to communicate to them. And so go ahead.
And red is my favorite color, but I know I'd have to be really careful using it. One of my gal pals in this industry used red because she was appealing to high-end celebrity. She did this wonderful thing. She got to put a box into the, what is it? It's so not the Academy Award, but the one.
Oh, the Oscars.
I mean, not the Oscars, but the one that comes first.
The Emmys.
No, it's still movies.
Oh, still movies.
The international.
Oh,
something. Anyway, she got to put something in a gift bag.
In the swag bags? Oh, cool.
And so she did a beautiful red leather box with a frame inside and a gift certificate for sessions. And she's beautiful blonde and very classy. And so it was perfect for her. Now, if I had put that out there,
right,
and then they met me in Aunt Lucy's 100-year-old house, what would have been the problem? I know I'm leading the witness. What's the problem with that?
Right, like they wouldn't be getting what they expected when they showed up. And that could be disappointing, breaking trust, or being like, what am I getting here?
Right.
Not what they expected. And they probably would walk away from a session with you feeling amazed and comfortable because you are amazing. But they wouldn't really be getting what they expected. And I think the bigger issue would be if they were looking for the blonde with the striking photographer, and someone referred them to you and went to your website, they'd be like, well, this isn't really the right fit for me, right? So that's what we want. We want to attract people who are going to book us and not be like, oh, yeah, that's not the right fit for me.
So what if somebody thinks, hey, I want to attract Hollywood celebrities and fancy people? I'll just say, in whatever's a fancy person in your mind, but they're really, what am I trying to say? How do you figure out who you want to attract?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we want to look at a few things. First of all, what kind of photography do you offer? Right? Like family is going to be different than business or weddings. That's going to help you figure out where to put yourself in front of them, right? Like if she photographs celebrities, like so brilliant to get herself into one of those swag bags, like that's the audience right there.
Yeah, it's Judy Host, by the way. Do you know
Okay.
Judy?
No, I don't think so. I'll have to look her up.
She's been on my show, and she's taught with the Canon
Oh, okay.
something of light people,
Oh
and
yeah.
she's
Okay,
just
cool.
this gorgeous, classy blonde, and now she's doing the most amazing fine art ballet photography
Oh,
that
cool.
she
That's awesome.
sells for a gazillion dollars.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the other thing, right? Like, do you want to make a ton of money in less time of offering your session? Or do you want a volume business, right? Like that's going to be different audience. And there's, pros to both, right? Just depends on what you want to do. And that's going to direct you toward the type of person. And then I think we just kind of have a inner knowing, I guess, for me. I knew I wanted to work with businesses because that's where I was working as a designer, and I love business, and kids stress me out and weddings stress me out. Like, what sounds awesome to you that you want to work with? And also, like, I worked with huge corporations in the fashion and tech industry, and I felt called to work with smaller businesses. Like, I wanted to help them be successful. And so that was just kind of part of, who did I want to work with? I guess.
Right.
And then also, where's your expertise? That could be another one. Did you already work with some kind of audience previously? Or, I know some photographers just really have a heart for maternity, right? Like they love being a mom and having babies. And so they want to work with pregnant people. Right? So yeah, I guess just some preference, and then also taking into account how much money you want to charge and make can really affect it. And then let's see, what are some other demographics?
Because
age, gender, right? Like,
right.
Who do you gravitate toward, or who needs the service, the expertise that you have? So
yeah, so there's children everywhere in San Diego County. Defining who are the families that I think I would enjoy working with the most, that have the income and that would be attracted to me if I put forth every kid's Aunt Lucy in a way that looks high value.
Yeah.
And there's a demographic in San Diego that I don't want to work with, which is the super wealthy, although I have worked with some people that live in Rancho Santa Fe, our wealthiest part of town. I've had great clients, but I would not extensively market directly there because there is more of a status and how I drove a Toyota truck for 500,000 or 250,000 miles because it was super practical back, when I was really, really grinding in my industry. And that level of people whose the center of their life is their family, and that they're not as into appearances and status, but they have piles of cash hanging around, or they'll find it because they want it.
Yeah, that's another thing to consider. Like, are you willing to show up where those people are or how they are, right? Were you, if you wanted to impress those people, I guess you'd have to have a really nice car. Be showing up,
and
at their
really
home.
dress fancy and probably wear heels and and things. And and that's all good too.
Yeah, for sure.
I've given some classes on branding myself, just some fun ones here and there. And what I noticed is, and just tell me if I'm right or wrong on this in your expertise, which is much greater than mine, that a lot of people think we have to figure out what our client will like and fit that. So like my I've seen a lot of photographers over the years have their branding be like black and gold and very ornate, but yet they're people off work that wear cowboy boots and plaid shirts. And when you meet them, they're not at all this
Right.
image. And then there's people like my friend Brad Kanzler. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's been around, but even when he wears jeans, there's a crease in them and they're perfect.
Yeah,
and he's always got a dress shirt on. And so the super ornate framing and luxury leather furniture and all the things that you'd think the idea of luxury would fit, he fits that. So can you explain some of that, or why that is something to pay attention to? Or
so are you asking, like, so the first guy,
so my
he
question,
did like a fancy thing because he thought that's what his clients would like?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is not that we start with what do I think will attract my client.
Oh yeah.
Start deeper.
So there's a balance, right? As a photographer, we are a personal brand, unless you have a big studio or something. And so you are a part of that. And I think you definitely need to be true to who you are. And then, but also thinking about the client too. For example, with me, I have a minimalist style, but it's also kind of classy. I mean, but I knew I'm like, I don't want to wear a pencil skirt to my shoots. Like, I'm going to be crawling around on the floor.
Yeah.
But when I show up to a meeting, I do wear, kind of what I'm wearing now, a sweater and some earrings, but I wanted to be comfortable. And so my brand is like that. Like, it's nice, but it's casual, and that's how I show up. And I am not really pursuing that kind of super snooty brand, I guess. Like, I work with a lot of holistic practitioners, a lot of women coaches, like super friendly, relaxed. And that's me.
Right.
And that's the type of client I wanted to work with. So kind of put out that vibe. And I guess, if you did want to attract a client that is really different than you, that's just something you'd have to consider and put on that persona, I think, for them.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a way to take anyone's personal, like what the experience is, and present it in a way that is high end and luxury.
Yeah, but still authentic too.
Right.
Right.
And I think it also gives us the opportunity to take a look at what we're presenting to the world and think about whether or not it's the right professional image. I have an issue, and sorry for my listeners that wear tennis shoes and leggings and a little top and their hair in a scrunchie and consider, well, I'm rolling around on the floor. I feel like dressing like that, it is harder to attract people who will spend $5,000 and $10,000 and $20,000.
Yeah, that's true.
And so dressing in the comfort, like I always wear what feels like pajamas, but when I'm professional, it looks like I'm polished. And so that's something. Do you have, oops, I almost dumped coffee everywhere. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously lawn guy is going to wear his lawn mowing clothes to work because that is fitting for what he's doing, right? And then if you're a photographer at a wedding, I absolutely think you should look nice. That's another reason I didn't want to do weddings. I was like,
I had many photographers and many church ladies in my career say, oh, thank God, you look so great. You wouldn't believe what photographers wear to weddings, and everyone else is dressed up. And so they would refer me because of what I wore.
Because you showed up professionally. Yeah. So for me, like when I'm meeting with people and we're having our strategies and stuff, I look professional. On the day of our shoot, I sweat so bad. So I actually wear a bandana. It's hot pink, so it's on brand. But it, absorbs the sweat a little bit. And then I'm usually in a t-shirt and kind of like, I don't know what they're called, like the travel pants, like they're really lightweight, and tennis shoes. But it's a long day, my feet hurt, but I feel like I have presented myself professionally.
Right. And you're not wearing shorts and flip-flops.
Yeah. No, I'm
ripped jeans that aren't fashion jeans.
Yeah. And it is part of my brand, right? Like I'm kind of like in black and the pink and then that's what I've deliberately chosen all of that stuff as part of my brand. So it's, definitely something to think about. How are you showing up? Do you have messy hair? I think the piercing and tattoo thing is a conversation to have, like if that's how you are, your clientele is going to be attracted to that probably. So if people don't like it, they're not going to hire you. So, right. Like that's part of your brand too. Right. Is how you're showing up in that way.
So what I'm hearing is like the best version of what's authentic that will attract the people to us that feel like there's a consistency, a cohesiveness. This is what I expected. This is my experience. This is who she is, that it all goes together seamlessly.
Yeah. Another thing is like language. I feel like the way you speak can also be part of your brand when you're showing up as a service provider. And that can be attractive or off-putting to certain audiences, right? Like I always, whenever I hire an assistant, I meet them first and just kind of, if they're like swearing, I'm like, I'll either tell them like, you can't have that language in front of my clients, or I just hire someone else, because that like the way you speak really impacts your professionalism or the perception of who you are, and some clients might feel comfortable with that and really like that, that type of language, just depending on, I know some photographers will like do off-color jokes and stuff too, and I'm just like, whoa, I would never say that, but it relates with their client and it's fine and they like that. So it just depends on but just thinking about your audience, like, is this going to attract the type of person that I want to work with?
Right. So my dad was a pastor, and so I developed the art of speaking well in a way that was not going to hurt the overall image that my dad was a bad parent, and also not get in trouble myself for swearing, and then step out the door and tell the dirtiest jokes and use whatever language around the appropriate people at the time. And so sometimes when I'm somewhere and my salty side comes out with someone that hasn't known me in that environment, they're like, what? I've toned that salty side down a little and as I've matured, but it's there if it's the right appropriate place.
Right.
So let's talk about the question of logos. So we've done this exploration, and we've determined, like, one of the things I like to do with my coaching clients is what I call an identity map, where I have them pull out things from magazines they just like the look of. It's not a dream board, just textures, colors, formulation of words, even if it says something like, get your next car here.
Right.
And then there's always this cohesive color theme that goes together. It's just, it's like magic.
Yeah.
But then the tricky part is translating that into all the visuals.
Right.
So talk
about
how you do
well,
that.
first of all, you have to have your business name. That's kind of one thing we skipped, but for a lot of photographers, we're going to use our own name, right? Like that's pretty common as a personal brand. And I do start with like a visual representation of all of that stuff from that brand storm. Like what type of client if it's a woman, I'm finding a woman who does yoga or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever decided is your target audience, I'm looking for photos for that. Then I'm looking for colors that go along with the feelings and emotions we want to evoke, or that you exude, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Aunt Lucy, you're like warm and fun. And so I'm going to look for things that would represent that, and put them all on like a little vision board. I start with that. And then I would usually go to fonts that communicate those personality things too. Like what font looks fun, what font looks a little juvenile, or
Mm-hmm.
and I'll gather a bunch. And then sometimes with the personal brand, you can just have a logo that's a logo type where it's just a font,
Mm-hmm.
without having an icon or anything like that. So that's a good place to start if somebody wants to just make their own logo.
Is to do what again?
Just finding a font that communicates the personality of your
Mm-hmm.
brand, and just having your name in that font, right?
Yeah.
That's
So
a good.
what's a caution if somebody's kind of doing it themselves, and
Yes.
let's say they're looking through, I don't know, Etsy or somewhere where people are selling logos and things. Do you have some thoughts on?
Yeah, so I say, like, don't pick something that just looks trendy. Like a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
do that, right? Like, oh, this font looks cool. Don't
Mm-hmm.
use papyrus font. Please do not do that. Uh, and just keeping in mind, what do I want to portray here?
Mm-hmm.
And looking for something that, and I guess maybe if you're not a designer, it's hard to determine that, I guess.
Yeah.
But we associate certain fonts with certain things, right? Like think of a Norman Rockwell magazine cover. Like that's a very certain font, and we're going to associate
Right.
that with Americana and family, that kind of stuff.
Midwest, possibly.
Yeah, and then there's like a sans serif font that's like super modern. We're
Mm-hmm.
going to associate that with you know I'm trying to think of like the modernist movement, I guess. I don't know, as an artist all that stuff, but some
Yeah.
people
Yeah. And I
don't
know,
know. So
and I love all that. I can just go down a rabbit hole for days. And I did trying to
me too.
kind of design mine until I realized I actually tried 3 graphic artists that I realized, sure, they knew how to put something together, but they did not understand branding.
Yeah, which is
Or
a unfortunate byproduct of like desktop publishing and YouTube, right? Like
yeah,
anyone can learn how to use a design software, but they don't necessarily
yeah.
understand branding and visual communications.
And this was even pre really all the tools that there are now,
Okay.
where it's people that actually knew how to do proper graphic art, but they didn't know how to figure out who is this person and what's going to communicate.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't know what I didn't know in hiring them.
Right. I was going to say, did you go through some kind of brainstorm process?
Not really. I gave them ideas and they knew my business, and I told them who my clients were. But they didn't. I'm trying to get colors on me that don't look green. I'm clicking my little light here.
Oh yeah. So that's a way you could vet designers, right? Like when you're interviewing a designer, tell me about your process. What does it look like for you to design a brand for me? And if they don't have something like that, I would skip them. Like if they're just going to send you a questionnaire that you fill out, I don't think that's a good way to go. Like you need to have our conversation, and so that they can understand what you're all about,
Right.
Before they try to translate that into individuals.
Right. So what about copy? How does that come in? The words,
Oh yeah, okay.
the words we speak, but also the words, if we're writing an email, copy on our website, copy on any ads that we're doing, or when we pick up the phone and we're wanting to get someone to, let's say one of the ways I get work a lot is from charity events.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a certain way that I call and I communicate with people to form the right kind of connection
Right.
so that they see me in a certain way. So talk to me about words.
Yeah. So part of that brainstorm is gathering all the words, and a lot of that is keywords. We're going to talk about like emotions that we want them to feel, and how you've defined your brand, right? We're going back to Aunt Lucy. Like it all stems from that strategy, right? Like, how would Aunt Lucy talk to these people on the phone? How would she speak on her website? And then speak into the problem that you solve too. I think, the solution you offer to them is important to keep in mind when you're doing your website copy. Speaking on the phone, I feel like I've learned the most about that from Nikki Rausch. Have you heard of her? The sales maven. Pretty much everything I know about sales I learned from her. And so she does like neuro linguistic programming, and has taught me ways to like speak in a way that makes people feel really comfortable and like they have the power and the control in the conversation, so they don't feel like they're being sold to, which they're really not. I'm just trying to find out, what's your problem and am I the solution to it?
Yeah.
I'm like presenting, here's the solutions I can offer you. So learning some of those things I think is important. And then putting your brand flair in there, right? Like, so if we're lawn guy, we're going to talk a lot differently than Aunt Lucy. We're going to speak to the problem and to the customer, and to the attitude of that brand persona, and that, age and income and that kind of stuff really come into that.
Right.
And, like drastically different talking to teenagers than middle-aged women.
Yeah.
And I think we just have to think of that. Just keep it in mind. Like, how would I speak to these people? It would be very different.
Right. Yeah. I've had virtual assistants. Right now I have an amazing one, and we've worked on my voice. She writes the copy for my promotions on Instagram and the emails I send out about my podcast and all of that. And we just updated my website. Oh, it's so beautiful.
Oh yeah.
And we work together on that. But finding my voice, I'd be like, that's a little formal. Or I noticed for a while she put a lot of punctuation in it, exclamation points and not icons, emojis. That isn't me. And now she writes things in a way that are even more my voice than my voice. And I had a challenge. I had a great virtual assistant in England, but we had challenges with the writing, which is her forte, because she used words that I didn't even know what she was talking about.
That we don't use in America. That's awesome.
She said, okay, this thing's coming up. Now put it in your diary. I said, okay, here, a diary is this little puffy thing with a poodle and a key, and you hide it under your mattress and you write, I hate my brother. I'm getting fat. Mom was a grouch today. And she's like, oh, journal. Like, no, a journal is a thing that has a beautiful quote and it's a book. And I write, I'm still fat. Why do I pick bad men? My mom's smarter than I thought. Finally, it was like, oh, you mean calendar.
My schedule, my calendar. That's a perfect example of communicating to the wrong audience, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get it. But having defined your voice like that is such a good example of a style guide, which if you're going to offload something to somebody, you have to define to them what it should look or sound like. Right. And I would say most small businesses, like a photographer, would not have done that. it's pretty advanced.
Would not have been
Defined their voice in a way that they could have someone else write for them.
right.
That's pretty awesome that you've done that. Bigger brands for sure. Like they're like the HP style guide when I worked for them was a website with hundreds of pages. Like every campaign had a different style guide, and you had to comply with it. Like, and there were so many different things, and brand voice is one of them. So I think that's pretty cool that you've been able to have her write for you and your style. It's really awesome.
Yeah. And I'm kind of dangerous because I'm a good writer, but not a professional writer. So yeah, it's tricky. And I tried some people in the Philippines. Yeah, because that when you're just starting and to get a virtual assistant help, there are people that for the money it can be a good deal. Philippines or there's some other countries, but the writing, when it's not their native language can be tricky.
Have you tried like ChatGPT? Have you played around with that at all?
Yes.
Because you can tell it. You can be like, here is my brand voice. Please write a blog post about this and this and this in this voice. And it's pretty cool.
Yes.
It's at least a good starting point, right?
Yeah. So when I updated my website, I did play around with it, and I ended up mostly not using any of it, but it sparked some thoughts. Right. And there were some words like that I was like, oh, that adds a little flavor. So I have to tell you a funny story. One day I got an email that was this beautifully written, many paragraphs. Thank you for supporting and being a friend and a great coach and this and that. And the person on Facebook a couple days before had recently said, oh my gosh, I'm loving ChatGPT. And I was like, oh, I know she means everything in this, but I don't think she spent 2 days polishing this perfect email.
Yeah,
but I loved it.
That's awesome. I've been using it to write or get headline ideas, like or subject lines for emails, because it's hard to think of stuff where you put one in and then say like, what are 10 alternatives to this subject line? I think it's pretty cool.
It's I've played around with it to help people with titles to enter in print competitions.
Oh, that's awesome.
They're usually a little too wordy, but give you some good words, so it's fun. Fun. Okay, so how do you know, this was a question in a Facebook group where she said, how do you know it's time to rebrand or get a new logo? I paid a lot of money to get my branding, and I don't, and that person is now even more, so I can't, it's just not really in my budget. How do I know if I need that?
Well, I would say, like, why are you questioning that? Like, if you're thinking, should I rebrand? Like, is there a reason for that? Do you feel like it's old-fashioned? Are you not getting the right clients that are coming to you, right? I think that's a good indication. If all your sales calls are like, these aren't the right fit people for me, there's probably something communicating the wrong thing to them. And that could be your branding. It could also be your copywriting. It could be a few different things. Are you switching gears, right? Like, are you going from weddings to branding photography, or like a totally different audience, right? That would be a good reason. Do you want to grow? Have you been in business for a long time and you feel like you need a refresh? A lot of my clients, that's the case, or they bought like an optometry practice that's been in business for 70 years or something. And like, we need something more modern that fits our style, let's see, as far as photographers go, does it just not fit you anymore, right? Like, maybe you started out and you just kind of picked something, you weren't really sure who your audience was yet. And now you've refined it. Like, who comes to you, who hires you, where you find your clients, and it's not really fitting anymore. Those are all good reasons to rebrand.
Yeah. And when you start seeing everybody doing exactly the same thing,
Yeah.
you know that your branding is you hooked into a trend.
Right. Yeah. That could be another one. Does it look like an outdated trend? Which is why I try to design logos that look timeless. It's good design. It represents you, not necessarily the trendy thing right now.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
another question to ask yourself. Like, are you just rebranding because you think like everyone else is rebranding,
Right.
or I'm not sure. My business isn't growing. I'm not sure what to do. Maybe I'll try rebranding. I would say have a good reason if you're
Right.
gonna spend more money to do that.
Yeah, I agree.
Mhm.
Or to me, I would say, I kind of mean this humorously, but if you have a camera in your logo, it might be time to rebrand.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. In mine, I have the little shutter thing. And when I actually hired someone to do my logo because I felt too close to it, right? Like, and I wanted to put my money where my mouth was, like, hire a professional to help you. And I was like, I do not want a camera or a shutter in my logo. But we ended it like it's a shutter with a little speech bubble thing. And I was like, that's perfect because it was branding photography. And even though I didn't want that in there, it ended up being kind of the perfect thing. So
Yeah.
I ended up with it. But
Yeah, but
uh,
proceed with caution.
yeah,
With
right.
that. Or if it's got a circle with flowers on the
Oh,
circle,
yeah.
it's time to rebrand.
Yeah, because it's just like so generic looking, right? It's just
Yeah.
like everybody has that.
Yeah.
It doesn't really communicate anything
When I was
about you.
trying at the time that I had that conversation with the women at the convention, I was madly trying because she was like, "Well, I think a script would probably work well with you because it's
Mhm.
signature, it's personal." And all of a sudden I found this script and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I love that." It was Zaf Chancery.
Mm.
And everybody, it's like that year it exploded that
Oh
I saw
man.
zillions of logos and just ads and things with Zaf Chancery, which is a cool script, but
Yeah.
trendy.
Yeah. Yeah. Most of the logos I design, well, if it has an icon, I use a very simple sans serif font. Like it's nondescript, it just it
Right.
says their name, it's easy to read.
Yeah.
And then the icon is the more prominent thing.
Mhm.
And I'd say if you're going to use an icon in your logo, just be really careful that it's not generic, like, oh, here's a camera.
So what's an icon?
So an icon is going to be the picture thing, right? Like, so in my logo, it's the camera shutter with the little talking thing, and then the word, that's the logo type. So you're going to have a logo is like the symbol, and then the logo type is the words. And most brands have them separately. So like McDonald's has the arches, then they have McDonald's, and they can use them by themselves or together, which is called a lockup.
Right.
So you can do that in your brand, and I do that in mine. I use them separately or together, or you can just have the words. So I think having an icon that's clever is awesome, if you can, right? It's oftentimes when hiring a designer is a good idea, unless you have that kind of mind and skill to come up with something, I
Right.
guess.
Right. Yeah. I love, like, do you know Leon Johnson?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we worked together and I had this, I don't know if he started it and then I did a bunch of research and then he hired a graphic artist to put it together. But we had this idea of like a sketch because he does beauty.
It's so beautiful. I love his work.
And the beauty is not contemporary. It's leaning and paintings that are hundreds of years old, like classic beauty. And so as we were searching one night, I was just on the internet with him just for fun and looking for things. And I saw this little pencil sketch that was I think it's Venus, the Botticelli,
Mhm.
just a little bit of her face. And I was like, that would be so awesome with just
Yeah.
a really classic Leon Johnson photography. And then one day something popped up with his logo on it that was what we'd talked about. And
Awesome.
he's like, yeah, I took that to somebody and they polished it up. And so that's when an icon like that,
Yeah.
that communicates what he does
Yeah. Yeah.
really well.
That brings me to another point. Like, as photographers, your work can become part of your brand. Like, if I saw Leon's, one of his, like, if his photo pops up in my Facebook feed, I know automatically it's his. You know, he's developed that style over time, and I know it's his. And there are photographers that have that, and that can be hard to do as a photographer because there's only so many ways you can differentiate yourself, I guess. Like, you know, a lot of photographers' work looks the same as a lot of others. So if you can develop a signature style, and become, I guess, the first one, maybe like Sue Bryce, right? She has a style. Lots of people have replicated it. She's taught people how to do it. But I still think of her when I'm like, oh, that's a Sue Bryce style photo, right? So that can become a powerful part of your brand as a photographer. Your style.
And because there's, I don't know, is it 6 billion people in the world? The people that we come in contact with as photographers don't know Sue Bryce.
Yeah, that's true.
As long as we're not copy, like we can copy it, like we'll say Ann Geddes. There are, so I don't want people to think, oh, you're talking about Sue Bryce negatively, and not at all. Or people that copy her style. But there are lots of what I consider Ann Geddes franchises.
Right.
It's their own business, but their work looks like she initiated a certain style
and made popular, right? Like maybe someone else did it before her, but we don't know about it.
Yes, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people doing babies and using this style. But your local client doesn't know Ann Geddes, or may have seen something similar and wants that and is drawn to that. So a whole industry of newborn photography was created because of that. And Sue Bryce, a whole industry of a kind of glamour, boudoir, contemporary branding photography industry has happened, because it's 12 years ago, nobody was doing boudoir at a high end. And then she hit the scene with all her brilliance, with really clear branding, right? Of who she was and what she was teaching and offering. And now it's a whole genre.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I would say my style is known locally, and it's not, I mean, you wouldn't look at it and say it's a specific style, I guess. It's just, it looks the same. Like, or, I mean, I don't know, because I do, for every brand I do differently, but I like a lot of color. I don't like to totally blow things out. Like, there's depth in my photos. We tell a story, right? So there's different things that make me look different than other branding photographers in my town.
Right.
So that's an important thing to look at, is your style, right? That is part of your brand.
Yeah, absolutely. So that brings me, and we're almost out of time. I mean, there's all the time in the world, but
don't want it to be too long.
So are you doing branding photography?
Yeah. So
what is branding photography versus a headshot?
So, well, my definition, I mean, I see a lot of photographers now, they're like, come for a branding photography session, and they're basically doing headshots in the studio. But anyway,
which is good, which is fine.
Yeah, it's good. Because you need a headshot as part of your branding photography. But for me, it's telling a story about what you offer, who you are, you know, like to use in your marketing. It's as part, and to represent your brand, right? If I'm going to design a website for you, I think you should have great photography that shows you and shows you offering your service or whatever. And that's why I originally started offering it, because I was working as a designer for like dentists and that kind of thing. and they would have no pictures or no good pictures for me to work with on their website or their newsletter or whatever. This was when, well, before social media, I started working at a dental marketing practice. And yeah, nobody had good pictures. And then when social media started to get popular, I was like, everyone needs good pictures more now than before. And then they would go like have their secretary take pictures or their wedding photographer take pictures, and they just wouldn't be appropriate for marketing. And so finally I was just like, well, I'm just gonna do it myself. So that's when I started learning more about photography and taking photography workshops. And yeah, that's when I got involved with photography myself.
So you came in the back, or you were doing design.
Yeah.
And then you were like, oh, we need some good photographs to help design. And then you were like, oh, I kind of like photographing too. So you incorporated that, like it was a little bunny trail that you followed.
Yeah. So now I'm kind of like a one-stop shop. Like we do strategy, logos, websites, and the photos and videos you need. And they're copywriting. I kind of do all of it for my audience. So
and that brings me to I think someone being photographed holding their camera is kind of cliche.
Yeah, it is. Probably the headshot I sent you, I'm holding a camera.
Well, that's all right, but just to be intentional about it and decide rather than think, oh, that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, right.
Is that right for your brand?
Yeah. And you don't need, I mean, I have one, maybe two pictures where I'm holding a camera. We have a lot of behind the scenes pictures, but mostly my headshots and my branding photos are me smiling or me working with my clients or that kind of thing. So
I'm so I'm kind of visual. So I'm looking at myself, and as the sun's going down, the contrast is getting harder and harder, and I'm like, let me pull out my little gizmo.
Like such a photographer thing, right? Like the quality of light is bad right here.
Exactly. And since I started doing this as videos on YouTube, if people are listening, know that this is also on the YouTubes. If you want to see the hot pink of Miss Tanya and the continuity of her branding, click on the tubes. So so what I'm hearing is photographs, like everything goes into play.
Yeah, and when we plan a photography session, I'm asking the same questions, like who's your audience? What do you offer? How much do you charge? Because it all matters in what we're gonna portray. And do you have branding colors? Let's make sure we're not totally clashing with them. Like you don't have to fill your photos with only your brand color, but if it's earth tones, you don't want to wear bright green in your pictures or have tons of a color in the background that's not going to look on your website. Even if I'm not designing the website, I want to keep that in mind for whoever is designing your website. Let's make sure we have assets for your brand that are going to work.
That's another good point. So I see a lot of people use teal that are doing a lot of outdoor with trees. And my eye gets a little bit confused.
Yeah, it clashes.
And if you're listening and you're using teal, it's beautiful. So don't be like, that's it, I'm never listening to Lucy again. It's just I notice all the things that it's just so nice when like there's a shade that's kind of like teal, but it would look good next to photographs that have a lot of greenery in it. There's a little line in that, or like pet photographers, when they use tones, because animals are kind of limited in their colors, what they wear. And so figuring out colors for brand that what I hear you saying. So tell me if I'm like, yep, that's what I meant. If you're doing lots of dogs, thinking about a website and logos where your colors would look good with photographs of brown fur and black and
Yeah.
white fur
Yeah.
and those kinds of things. Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. And I think color is the hardest thing for people to choose. Like when I evaluate people's websites, sometimes I'll do free like website. What am I talking about? Tell you what I think about your website.
Yes.
Color is the hardest thing
Mm-hmm.
to choose. And even when I'm designing a logo, like that is one of the most important considerations and hardest things to get right, because there's so much psychology and like emotion
Yes.
tied to colors and shades of colors, so that's an important thing to think about.
Right.
Is what are the colors communicating that you're
Right.
using in your
Right.
in your brand?
And the most subtle, like there's a purple, I use like a dusty lavender. And sometimes if someone's helping me with something, they'll use a purple that's too purple. And it looks garish to me. It doesn't communicate the same as this subtle, like a lavendery purple.
Yeah. And that's why it's important to have a style guide where you have like the hex codes of all the colors that you can give to people,
right,
that are helping, so it's 100% consistent every time. So when I do a brand for people, I give them a style guide with all those numbers and the fonts and all that kind of stuff. I keep it consistent.
So I have 2 questions for you, but first I need to pause and ask you a question privately. So if you're listening, don't go away. You won't even notice we're gone. Ta-da, we're back. Did you even notice? No, you did not. All right. So before we go, I have 2 questions. One, I know you're offering a little freebie to give people some extra bonus value from this conversation. So what is it and how would they get that?
Yeah, so it's called it's the Discover Your Brand Style Quiz, and it's just a quick little quiz you take to define a brand style for you. And oh my goodness, let me
I've got it. WorkStoryCreative.com/brand quiz with a Z.
Perfect.
All right.
And also it's on my homepage too at the top. I think it's a little banner there you can quiz on.
And that's all in show notes if you're like, I'm driving, I can't write that down. So the last question is either something you haven't brought up that you want to be sure to mention, or just a parting thought that you want to leave us with. So
yeah, so I didn't mention yet, I have what's called a Brand Your Biz kit. And so
hold on.
Sorry.
Hold on. This question is about about you and your business.
Okay, perfect. Just another.
But you have a brand kit that's $50 off. So there's that, Lucy.
Yeah.
So the question is about education, either something, a parting thing to think about, or something in the education part that you think, oh, I wish I had mentioned that. So take it away.
Let's see. Okay. So let's see, what do I want to mention?
There.
Shoot, now I'm getting off guard.
So something in the neighborhood of why it's important to brand, or something in that whole like something.
So as a photographer, I think it's worth your time to evaluate, what you're putting out into the world, whether you've deliberately created branding or not. You've got a brand. Take a look at your website, your social media, your emails you're sending, and see, is it consistent? Does it feel authentic to me? Is it communicating to the audience that I want to attract? And if it's not, you can ask yourself, go through this episode again, like what are some things I could change? And hopefully that's going to help you.
Yeah. And hire a professional.
Yes, you could hire someone if you need some help.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Tanya, for being on the show again. I love talking about branding. And if I wasn't doing photography and I wasn't coaching, I could probably take some classes on actual graphic design. So I knew what I was, I know when it works and I know when it doesn't, but I don't know how to get from A to Z necessarily.
Yeah. Right.
But,
yeah. I was actually talking to someone about this today. Design, like you don't have to be creative or an artist to design, because design is just a set of rules. So you could go learn the rules of design and design something that's cohesive and works.
Yes.
But you don't have to. Like, you're a photographer and a coach.
Yeah.
Unless you have a burning desire to be a designer, you don't need to.
Yeah, I'm just saying I love branding so much. That's fun to talk about because I could go that direction. I was the editor of my yearbook in high school, and there was a lot of branding and designing those pages besides cropping and editing photographs. I didn't photograph, but yeah, it's all in
yeah. So that's actually what got me interested in graphic design, was the high school yearbook.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And photography. We did our own black and white film photography back in the day.
We had a staff photographer, but
nice.
Anywho, so I look forward to connecting in the places that we connect, and I know people are going to love this conversation. Stay tuned for my little quickie wrap up, and thank you, Tanya, a million times for being on my show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I love it.
You're welcome.
You have been listening to The Highly Profitable Photographer with Lucy Dumas. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please rate, subscribe, review, and share. To connect one-on-one and learn more about our coaching programs, just go to lucydumascoaching.com. Until next time, go have fun photographing and selling your work.